Nick Lavery, welcome to the Mindset Advantage podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time, man. It's an honor to have you on the show today.
Likewise, brother. I appreciate the time. Looking forward to it.
We were talking off air a little bit about my knowledge in the military world is pretty limited, but I'm here humbly stepping forward, wanting to know more about it, wanting to know more about you, some of the lingo, some of the language. So I first want to just start with Nick. You're a Green Beret. Can for the people out there like me, what does that mean? What does it take to get to that point? How many of you are there? What does it mean to be a Green Beret?
Yeah, it's a good question. So United States Army Special Forces is our actual nomenclature. We're just have been going by the name the Green Berets now for quite a bit of time. Most thanked to President Kennedy, who kind of made that official for us. And while we got a lot of special operations units in the United States military, what makes the Green Berets unique is we are built specifically to work with and through indigenous personnel or with and through other humans. So when you look at that, well, we are certainly capable of doing a lot of things we refer to as unilaterally, meaning just by ourselves. Well, it's extremely rare for that to happen. So what Green Berets are, what I would say above all else, is we are complex problem solvers. We are self-sufficient teachers, and we're war fighters. We get after it. When it's time to go to work, it's time to go to work. But we are asked to be able to not only survive and thrive, but also enable other human beings to do what the collective we need us to do. The process to get to it is in a lot of ways similar to other special operations units. You got a selection period where you basically get your ass kicked for X amount of time. And, our cadre out there looking for specific physical and character traits, attributes that can be built upon. So you get through that, then you go into, your next evolution of training. When I came through, which is now coming up on 17 years ago, it was a much longer process. So by the time I entered the military, it was about little over 2 years before I finally got to my first unit of all training. Nowadays, it's streamlined a bit, but you can still expect anywhere from 12 to say 18 months of basic and into advanced training. And then, you get to your team, which were built as 12-man ODAs, stands for Operational Detachment Alpha. Here we go with the military acronyms like you and I talked about. Get to your team. And then of course it's time to go to work. So it's certainly a unique fraternity. Special operations community is really, really small. But I just simply I couldn't imagine doing anything else, man.
Before we get into some of the intricate details, take me back to 17 years ago, Nick. What was the moment like? What was the moment where you knew you wanted to be a Green Beret? What was that moment in your life like?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly where and when I was. It's a moment that I would say all of us that were at least old enough to recognize what was going on will never forget where they were. And it was September 11th, 2001. And I had just turned 19 years old. I was a sophomore in college, and I was watching planes fly into the towers in New York. And, I had kind of this idea of joining the military earlier in life when I was in high school. What really stopped that from happening was me getting recruited to play football in college. So that's the only reason why I went to college, but I did do that. And then, my sophomore year was 9/11, and that was the catalyst for me. There was no question in my mind about if I was going to get into this game that I knew we were about to stop playing. The only question was when. And, I struggled to stay in school. I really, toyed with the option of just dropping out and getting right into the service right then and there. But I ultimately did stay in. I grinded out the rest of my degree. And by the time I got out, we were surging in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So not only was the game still being played, but we were doubling and tripling down. So it was time for me to go to work.
So it sounds like it was an automatic decision for you. You talked briefly there about the people that are in the Green Beret teams. They're very elite at complex problem solving and decision making. Could we talk a little bit about that, Nick? What separates you guys so well from being able to problem solve and make decisions rather quickly than most people do? Why do you think you guys are so good at that? And is there a protocol? Is there a system? What makes you so good at problem solving?
Yeah, it's a great question. it's something I throw around if I'm doing any of my consulting work or any of my construction or my training curriculum. It's like, what kind of solutions are required to solve complex problems? And many will say, complex solutions. And it's actually like, no. It's got to be like very simple. Simple solutions solve complex problems. Now, you may need and likely will need multiple simple solutions, but it's got to be simple. It's got to be a way not only you can understand it, but those around you, and it's particularly in a team environment. Most of us operate in some form of team environment. Everyone's got to understand it. So it's got to be simple. So simple solutions solve complex problems, particularly when you stack them together. And I would say that the Green Berets operate in that exact way. And that is what makes us the most requested unit of action within the special operations community by a mile. Our senior leaders that are in charge of these operational elements, these operational areas, request us consistently and constantly. And I would say it's because of that. And how do we go about doing it? What are our processes and protocols? Really, we focus heavily in the overwhelming majority on being masters of the basics. It's the crazy, sexy, cool guy action flips off the rooftops. It's like, yeah, maybe that stuff has to happen at some point, but we very much hone in on the basics. And what make us as advanced as we are, in my opinion, is the ability to execute the basics inside complex and difficult environments. So while the environments can get much more difficult to understand and grasp and operate within, you're still employing the basics or a degree or several basics. And that's the same philosophy, right? Simple solutions cause or solve complex problems. And that's what I would argue makes us a differentiator.
And I would imagine too, Nick, that when you go back to the basics and the fundamentals, that's what speeds up the decision making. So what you guys do is not only you make incredible decisions, but you make them really fast. So being able to fall back on your fundamentals allows you to speed up your decision making. Is that what you're saying?
100%. And, once you get that baseline down, right, we were talking exposure. Once you've been exposed to it, then you can move into gaining experience within it, which is something entirely different. Right? Exposure is step one. Experience would be step two. Then you begin to earn yourself towards a degree of expertise. And that comes with knowledge and repetition and exposure. And then from there, you keep working at that. You can find yourself in the elite category, which is a hybrid of all three. But yeah, it's basics done in continuous repetitions and strategically and tactically increasing the complexity in which you are employing those basics. That is not only what makes it effective, but to your point, what speeds up the decision-making process when you're going live.
I'd be curious for a guy that has so much experience as you do. We're talking about experience and exposure. What's the conversation like with a new Green Beret or as somebody that's very new into the military? They don't have the experience yet. They only have a little bit of exposure. As a guy like you who's so seasoned, experienced, seen it all, what's the conversation like? How can you help them be a step further than the rest by just on your experience? What are some of those conversations like, Nick?
Yeah, those are probably my amongst, if not the most favorite opportunities that I now get to have. And, it's not to get off track, and I do want to address what you just said, but, it's a wild transition because although I've been doing this now coming up on 17 years, and I am very much now one of the old, crusty, war-torn guys in the team room or in the company, I swear, it was 15 minutes ago. I had just kind of figured out what this job is. It just goes by so fast. And now all of a sudden you're kind of the old gray beard amongst these young studs. And it's not only is it shocking in a lot of ways, but it's also an incredible honor and it's very humbling. And you realize the power and the importance that comes with that level of experience and passing on that knowledge to the next, group of young savages. So, there's a lot that goes into it. I'd say the new guys on the teams, the general guidance is, hey, there's no wrong question. You may hear about it if you ask a silly question, but that doesn't mean don't do it. Like send it. You may hear about it. So many guys may give you some shit, but take that on the chin and get it out there. Do not sit in the corner and be confused. So ask questions, soak as much as you possibly can in, and don't be afraid of failure because you're going to get it wrong. In fact, We need you getting it wrong as often as possible within the parameters of what we deem is acceptable and safe, right? Because we have to continue to make progress. We have to get ready for the next mission. The work is going to keep coming in, but we need you as the new guys to be getting it wrong as often as possible within our parameters. And those are put in there by design. And if you are afraid to take that step, with most young guys will be, because they want to prove themselves. They want to be an asset. They don't want to be a liability. They want to be at the tip of the spear. They want to be the first guy to go in the room. And you need those individuals. You also got to be cautious and cognizant that pride and that ego can oftentimes get in the way of learning and getting better, because you're so hesitant to make the mistake that you operate within this safe zone when it's unnecessary. So as the older guys that these young studs are looking up to, and man, I want to be you in 10 years, and I want to live the things that you did, and all these things. It's like, awesome. Maintain that degree of motivation and go get itness. Keep the hair on fire, but be willing to extend yourself and get it wrong. And again, you're going to hear about it, and that's okay, because we need you messing it up in order to learn from the mistake, because that's where the wisdom's located, and that's how you and we continuously get better.
I love that. I always say failure is feedback. Nick, I'm curious for you now. So that's the advice you're giving now. Take yourself back to 17 years ago, or maybe it's sometime during a tour, sometime when you were overseas. What was one of the best piece of advice that you got? So we know the advice you're giving now. What's something that somebody told you that was life changing, whether you're overseas or here, or it was early on, or maybe it was just lately? What's a piece of advice you've heard that was life changing for you?
Oh man, I go back to my first trip into Afghanistan, which was maybe just, I don't know, 6 or so months after I got to the teams. So it's fast. And I had a lot of senior guys on the team that I happened to go to. So not only was I the junior guy just as a result of just coming out of the qualification course, but I went to a team that had exclusively extremely seasoned and experienced individuals. And it was just based on the type of mission sets that we were responsible for doing. And I got that same type of advice from these guys that I looked up to, and they made it very clear. They're like, dude, we're going to be throwing well more stuff at you than you could possibly take in. We know it, and I want you to know that you need to know it. We know it. Absorb what you can. What you miss is what we're here to fill in and for you to make up for. So no going in. So in a lot of similar ways, kind of setting the conditions. And for me, to help me set my expectations of myself as the young go-getter who wants to desperately prove himself to this group of warriors that I want to be part of that culture, kind of just setting the conditions from the beginning. You are not going to get all this. It will take you multiple years before you even begin to truly grasp what your job is and what we do here as a detachment. Learn fast, ask questions, take a lot of notes. Don't be afraid to extend yourself, but just know that no matter how motivated you are, how smart you are, how many hours you spend in the gym or studying training manuals, you're looking at multiple years before you even reach the point of becoming close to being a true professional.
You have a quote that I think falls really well in this. I got it on your Instagram. I saved it. It says, quote, "A bad day for your ego is a great day for your progress." Close quote. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Man, ego is one of those things, DJ, that I keep learning about. And, my opinion of it continues to mold and modify over time, because on one hand, I do think that egotistical decision-making can very easily lead to catastrophe. However, a sense of self, having a ego, can be weaponized for good without question. And there is power that comes with that. So you can also look at the interpretation of what that means. And here's where philosophy and wordsmithing and psychology becomes really fun for those of us that enjoy kind of analyzing and studying and learning and growing. So with that, I would say I'm more talking about egotistical decision-making, or just the sense of your pride and being okay with, not only okay with it, but needing for that shock to the ego of embarrassment, failure, internal doubt by messing something up or by getting it wrong. It's along the same lines of what we're talking about here. And for many, and this is just statistics, many will then begin to avoid that catalyst that gave them that feeling, right? I don't want to feel that again. I was embarrassed. I'm shameful, whatever it is. I don't want to feel that again because I really dislike that. So I'm going to avoid that from now on moving forward. And unfortunately, the exact opposite, in my opinion, is what's required for sustained growth and to even enter into the realm of being great at whatever it is you're trying to do. For the minority, that catalyst, that pain, that's the spark to be like, all right, well, I am going to go back and do it again. But that pain is the trigger that drives the analysis to learn. That pain is where the wisdom then becomes extracted from. Because you're right, I don't want to feel that again. I do want to get it right. I do need to win. The few, use the pain to drive knowledge acquisition and then ram that back into the system, process, tactic, technique, whatever, and go back again. Unfortunately, the majority are like, yeah, I'm going to off ramp and I'm going to find all these quote unquote reasons why this isn't in my best interest. And that's a recipe for mediocrity, man. So yeah, if it hurts, it's supposed to hurt. What you do with the pain is your choice.
Well said. For those of you that are listening and watching on YouTube, what you can't see is that Nick has a prosthetic leg, and I would love Nick to go through the story. Obviously, the book Objective Secure, phenomenal read. Nick, you did such a great job with this, man. The
Thank you.
Battle Tested Guide to Goal Achievement. This book is centered around that moment in your life that really changed your life, obviously for obvious reasons. I'd love, Nick, for you to take the mic and walk us through that day overseas when you lost your leg.
Yeah, man. I'll kind of go wave tops. DJ, you can dial us in. This was my third trip into Afghanistan. We went in the fall of 2012 in September into an extremely kinetic environment. And kinetic is kind of a like a less scary word for dangerous. If you're in a kinetic environment, you can expect to be in gunfights, explosions, things going off. That's kinetic. We knew what we were getting ourselves into. In fact, we fought to get that exact mission amongst the other teams that were all going in at the same time, and we got what we asked for, and it turned out to be exactly the kind of mission we thought it would be. I was wounded on 3 separate occasions. First time I took some shrapnel to the back of my shoulder. All right, fine, not really a big deal. About a month or so later, I took an AK-47 round to the face. Obviously, I got really lucky. Took me out of the fight like 3-4 days, and then I was back at it. And then on the very back end of the deployment, after being there about 5.5 months, we were set to come home in a couple weeks, was when I was wounded for the 3rd time. And this was the result of what we refer to as a green on blue, which is a military way of saying an insider attack, meaning that a guy that we had been working alongside of turned on us. And this was extremely common during this time period. So it's now March of 2013 on the same deployment. And just as we were getting ready to go onto an operation, a member of the Afghan National Police Force, he jumped up on the back of a Ford Ranger pickup truck that had a belt-fed PKM machine gun attached to it, and he opened fire into me and my friends from about 25 or so feet away. It is considered the most catastrophic insider attack that we know of. There were 12 U.S. casualties, 3 of which killed, and another 10 or 12 or so Afghan casualties killed or wounded. Most of the damage to me was to my right leg. It took 4 or 5, maybe 6 rounds to my right leg alone. It just ripped it to shreds, shattered my femur into 30 or so pieces, severed my femoral artery. And I really should have died that day, all intents and purposes. And this is a case study that's actually researched and studied through med schools across the country. I've had a chance to go and talk to some of the doctors out there and spend time with some of the students, and they study this because there really isn't much of a scientific or biological explanation into how I was able to survive. So in my opinion, this is where kind of my faith comes in. And, I believe that I was saved and I'm able to remain on this planet today because there's a reason for that. And I've got things that I'm expected to do and things that I need to do. I would end up spending a year at Walter Reed Medical Center, which is in Bethesda, Maryland, as they slowly just amputated my leg piece by piece, usually 3, sometimes 4 days a week. And at this point, they were really battling the infection that had set in. So they're just incrementally cutting my leg off in small chunks over the course of about 35 or so surgeries, eventually getting the infection under control, leaving me with what I have today, which is a femur that's about 4 inches long. And, then began my route to recovery and learning how to use it in a prosthetic and live life as a one-legged guy. And, when you're 6'6" and you got a 4-inch femur, mechanically, it makes things very difficult. Losing a limb is difficult, period. And everyone's injuries is different. For me, just the vast difference in leg size and shape made things just that much more difficult. But, when I was in the hospital, I was still in the intensive care unit. My decision was crystal clear to me. In fact, I didn't even see it as a decision, DJ. I just knew exactly what I was going to do. And even though I was still fighting for my life and I'm on all the drugs and in and out of anesthesia and I'm like whacked out of my mind, it was very clear to me. I could see it. I could taste it, smell it, touch it. There was no question that I would be going back to doing what I do. And that was it. And there was no compromise. There was no plan B. There was no contingency. Like that was it. And although I had not a clue as to how, which was something I eventually had to figure out, that was the game plan, so that was on my mind every day. And people say absolute terms quite frequently and they don't truly mean it, or it's just inflated. No. This is meant to be literal. Every day, that was what was on my mind. That is what got me out of bed. That is what got me to my rehab session. That is what got me to the next thing. I mean, it was all I could think about. It was all I could see. It was all I could focus on. So after a year, I returned back to my unit, which at the time was out of Fort Bragg. I was offered a full medical military retirement, which I obviously said no to. And then I found myself in an administrative battle with the United States Army, who really did their best to have me forced out. I had to dig my heels in and just refuse that end state. Ultimately, I won that fight. And then it was about getting back onto the team. I was working as an instructor during that time period. I made it clear to my leadership that I felt like I was ready to give it a shot to get back to a team. There had never been an above the knee amputee that had successfully done that. So as with anything that's never been done before, there's a lot of questions and a lot of concern and a lot of doubt and a lot of hesitation. All that is totally understandable. But God bless my chain of command, because they did give me the opportunity, and they just, over the course of what ended up being 12 weeks, ran me through the ringer. I mean, they just tested me and evaluated me on everything you could probably imagine, and probably some things that you would not even think of, as was the case for me. So after 12 weeks of tests, I was given the approval to return back to my detachment. I ended up going back to the same team I was on when I was wounded. And about 6 weeks or so later, I was back in Afghanistan conducting full spectrum combat operations.
It's incredible. There's so many stories within the story. There's one part, Nick, I'd like to pull out, man. And to use your term, you're in the bird, and there's two guys in there that were working on you, and they didn't know really what to do, and they were trying everything. And this is such a interesting part of the story. Can you walk us through what that was like, where they didn't know what to do? One was really young. You said he was only 15 minutes into being a doctor. Walk us through that moment of your life, man. That's such a fascinating part of the story.
Yeah, there's so many lessons in this story. And I typically tell this story, whether it's a military audience or not, and most people laugh and they can kind of visualize what it's like. Certainly if you're a soldier or a service member, you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on here. But even just, common folk, like, wow, but there's true value to it. And what you're referring to is, when I initially was medevaced out after being shot a whole bunch of times, I got to an outstation. I needed a blood transfusion desperately. They gave me one. They put my femoral artery back together. And then as soon as they were done with that procedure, all my vitals began to crash. And they weren't sure what the problem was, but they were overwhelmed of us in total at a very small contingent that was there to work on us. So they said, we got to get Nick to Bagram, which at the time we had a full-blown base and full-blown hospital. So they throw me back on another helicopter and they fly me to Bagram. And it's while I'm on that flight, which is about 12 minutes in total, they realized that they had just pumped me full of 6 units of an incompatible blood type. And that's what was killing me. So they realized that. And then they call Bagram and they said, this is what just happened. there's no way Nick survives this flight to you guys. It's impossible. So just be prepared to receive his body when he gets there. And they were like, okay, well, roger that. So they relay that information to the bird that I'm now on. And I got maybe 6 or so minutes left until I reach Bagram. And there are 2 medics, flight medics, that are on the helicopter with me. And they get the information over the radio of what my situation is. Because at this point, I've already coded. So they're like, hey, this is what happened. There's nothing you can do to save him. They don't have the ability on the helicopter to flush me and put me on dialysis, like all the tools that you would need to even potentially save me. They don't have those resources. So they get told this information. So, what do you think these 2 guys do? And to your point, what we're dealing with here is an E5 sergeant, which is like still a relatively junior position in the Army. So that person, ballpark figure, you can say, has been in the Army for anywhere from, I don't know, 4 to 6 years, somewhere in that ballpark. And then there was a private first class working alongside him who, as I joke, says was in the Army for about 15 minutes. So very, very junior individual, right? I possibly fresh out of basic training, first deployment ever, like really new guy. So these are the 2 dudes that are working on me. And here's where I joke. I'm like, what do you think these 2 guys did when they received that information about me? They just like, I said, all right, well, the hell with it. They just sat back and just rode out the rest of the flight. No, it's not what they did. These 2 guys decide to just dump out their med bag. And I've had a chance to talk to both of these guys, years and later. The power of the internet and social media, it's wild. They dump out their med bag and they just start trying stuff on me. And I remember having this conversation with this kid the first time I talked to him. And I was like, did you have any idea if any of these widgets you were using on me would even work, like, at all? He's like, not really, dude. We just started like trying stuff. So they almost turned me into this like Frankenstein science experiment as we're whipping over the desert in Afghanistan in a Black Hawk helicopter. And a couple of the interventions that these dudes decide to apply is they end up blasting me with somewhere around 7 times the allotted amount of adrenaline that the United States Army allows medics to give their patients. So they're just dosing adrenaline into my bloodstream, and they got the panels going, and they end up hitting me with like 4 or 5 times the highest voltage that they're allowed to administer to a patient. So you can imagine these 2 maniacs, right? That they're just like, well, whatever, like more, like amp it up, charge 350, charge 450. And I'm getting the verbiage wrong, but you see where I'm going, clear, more adrenaline. They're just like, the hell with it, and you could look at that and say, well, these guys are wildly insubordinate and fail to follow protocol. And that's absolutely true. They did do that. You can also look at it and say, well, these guys are sick, sadistic, psychopathic maniacs that just wanted to, try a bunch of weird science experiments on somebody. Probably not the case. Actually, I know that's not the case because I've talked to both of these individuals. Or you could open up door number 3 and say, these guys were literally willing to do whatever it took. And they just flat out refused to just sit there and do nothing. And they were willing to take a risk, and they were willing to extend themselves into the realm of the unknown. Would they be punished for this? Would there be an investigation? Would they be booted out of the Army because they went so beyond what is considered doctrine and protocol that they're putting their careers and their lives and their reputations at risk? Yes. Like, was that actively in the front of their minds? Probably not, but that is what was going on. And that exists somewhere within the decision-making process, whether it's at the front or the back, conscious or sub. And that's where I think, while it's funny to talk about and we can look back and laugh as I do, and it's wild, these 2 young maniacs are just unloading the kitchen sink onto me as I'm really dying. But the value, in my opinion, is just that, is in any organization, certainly in a government organization, and certainly in a military organization, we've got doctrine and protocol and policy and military law and regular law. We got all these guidelines that we're expected to follow. And those are there based off of experience, of trial and error, and getting it wrong and seeing mistakes made and trying to increase efficiency and performance and reduce risk and all these things. And it's our responsibility to know them and adhere to them. Roger that. That said, however, when you're in these moments of high stress and you've got fractions of seconds to make decisions, you're the one that has to decide where you're going to draw that line. And I use this as an example to really get after our own morals and our moral integrity. And in my opinion, as long as you can go to sleep at night knowing you adhered to your values as it pertains to your morals, that is, I believe, to be the true guiding light. That will lead you true north. That is your compass. And when it comes to policy and ethics, perhaps at times that isn't quite so black and white. Perhaps there's a gray that exists somewhere in between or outside, and it's our morals and our integrity and our values that are going to keep us operating in the right, regardless of who's watching, because we're living who we know to be true and what we believe to be true.
And how about just the lesson of taking action, Nick? I mean, these guys could have sat back, they could have let you do your thing, but they took action. Something that's been on my mind a lot lately is this quote that reads, "Your thoughts determine what you want. Your actions determine what you get." I think we live in a society where people like to talk about all the things they're going to do, and they like to tell their friends about it, maybe even journal about it. They like having the conversations, but the action just isn't there. And we know that action changes everything. In your book, I think this kind of parlays into, you talk about patience and procrastination. And the quote is, "Patience is a dangerous word. While necessary, this can be very easily become our number one limitation. It is when patience transforms into procrastination, then we have a problem." So if you see what I'm doing, I'm trying to tie these two together here. Talk to me about this
Yeah.
idea of talking and being patient and waiting and procrastination versus sometimes you just got to F and go and have some action. What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, 100%, man. And you brilliantly stated. And dude, everybody wants something, or some multiple somethings. Everybody wants something. It's a tangible item, whether it's a relationship, a profession, a job, a skill. Everyone wants stuff. It's part of being a human being. While wanting something, I think, is towards the beginning of a process. If it ends there, then it doesn't matter. In order to even begin to move towards making something a three-dimensional reality, it's in the actions. It's in the act. You have to start executing and doing stuff. And I think oftentimes, or at least with some, we get this paralysis by analysis going on, where it's like, well, I need to read one more book. I need to watch one more video. I need to watch, 7 more inspiring Instagram reels, and then I'll be ready to go. And while I do believe there's value in strategy and having a game plan together, as I write in Objective Secure, in my opinion, you need to know just enough to get the ball rolling, because you're going to adjust and you're going to get it wrong. And it's never going to be perfect. You want to learn just enough so that you're at least in a generally right direction. And if I want to start getting healthy, I've never been in a gym ever a day in my life. Maybe YouTube a couple videos, like how do you do a back squat? How do you do a deadlift? Just like basic, general, quick understanding, and then start executing. Because the execution, not only is that going to lead to results, but it's going to let you know where you need to adjust your course and like where you're getting it wrong. It's going to continue to change. And kind of within that, what you're getting after here in the book is, patience versus procrastination. I think you got to be very careful, man. You got to be very careful. It's a slippery slope, because I know at this point that patience is not only a virtue, it's also a skill, and it's required, because without it, you could very easily become incredibly frustrated, and that could be enough to derail you. And then the justifications and the excuses and whatever happens, it's going to take time. And there is no way to speed that up, right? You can't read experience. You have to do it, and you have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And that's where you get better. And that's how you continue to grow sustainable. So it's going to take time, especially these loud, bags, right? Big, audacious goals. And you want to play on Sundays, walk out of that tunnel on Gillette Stadium, that ain't happening tomorrow. All right. So yes, patience becomes a part of that process and an ingredient within that success. But where, in my opinion, it gets dangerous is where you keep kicking this can down the road and you're telling yourself you're being patient, right? Like yeah, it's going to take time. It's going to take, we're looking at least 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and like whatever case study you're looking at or example or inspirational post you saw that says it's going to take a while. You're reading Malcolm Gladwell and you're like, okay, cool. It's going to take 10,000 hours. Roger that. Well, it's going to take a while. So like, I can't get frustrated with this. And by doing so, you're failing to launch. Yeah, it is going to take time, but it's going to take that kind of time while you're getting after it aggressively every day. Then it's going to take time. If you just stay stagnant, well, it's not going to happen at all, ever. So patience is a skill, one that certainly brings value. But where I think it become dangerous is when you tell yourself you're being patient, but in reality, what the truth is, you're putting things off that you can be doing now.
Exactly. Tell me if you like this, Nick. It almost sounds like it just kind of came to me is what we should be striving for is active patience. Active
Ooh,
patience.
I like that.
Okay.
That's good. May want to
Uh,
trademark that. Otherwise,
might, might want to trademark that. Maybe we can do something together with that. Now, as we look back on this, Nick, you seem like a very calm individual. You can talk about this event, and it doesn't seem to shake you up too much. Are you still there, Nick?
yeah, I got you.
Oh, we just lost you for a second. Okay. So we'll just clap this back. I'll have my editor clap this back. Hold on.
Cool.
So, Nick, it seems like just from knowing you just very briefly here that you can go back and talk about this in a very calm sense. I mean, you say things like, I got my leg blown off, I'm getting shot. You seem very calm about it. And I think something that sets you Green Berets apart from civilians is being calm in the chaos. Something I like to coach in my mental performance training is self-control and discipline and being able to stay calm. Are we back?
Yeah, we're back. All right, man.
Okay. Was that me or you? I'm sorry if that was me.
I have no idea. I
Okay,
can
we're
hear
back.
you. You can hear me. We're back and we're good to go. Let's
All
fucking do
right.
it.
Sounds good. So Nick, as I talk to you, I haven't known you very long here, but it seems like when you go back and you talk about some of these things, you seem very, very calm about it. You're like, hey, yeah, I got shot in the leg, I got this tourniquet, and they're doing all this stuff. You seem very calm. I think what separates people like you from civilians is that you can stay calm in the chaos. And this to me is a skill. And it's a skill that I teach. A part of my 7 skill system is self-control and discipline. I'm curious, how do you coach this? How do you teach this to somebody, whether it's in the military or whether it's in the boardroom or whether it's an athlete? How do you teach self-control? How do you teach staying calm? Is it something you're born with? Talk to me about that because it's certainly admirable.
Yeah, no, great point. I appreciate it. I'll hit two aspects of this. One is, and Dale Carnegie, in my opinion, says it brilliantly. When you're dealing with a human, you're not dealing with a creature of logic. You're dealing with a creature of emotion, and I think that is perfectly stated. And in fact, it is one of the differentiators that separates human beings from every single other living organism on this planet, and it is deeply rooted in why and how we're able to be what we are and the dominant species that we are driven by emotion. Now, particularly within military, special operations, any hyper type A type organization, law enforcement, first responders, the boardroom, or really anywhere, is you start talking about emotions and it's going to make people uncomfortable. And I do these kinds of seminars and workshops all the time. If I'm in a room full of savages, the second I even say the word emotional, people get uncomfortable, start shifting their seats, looking around. No, not me, right? Not me. I'm an animal. I'm a go-getter. I'm a cyborg. I'm emotionless. You tell me what needs to happen, I go execute. So, hey, Roger that. I get it. I'm one of you. I know that. But to try to deny that there is an emotion attached to every single decision we make is just flat out incorrect according to both psychology and neurology. You can try to argue this all day long. It's just part of what makes us human beings. It's also part of what makes us great and special. So let's first just gain some understanding that that is happening. That is happening. So we're just talking general awareness. Then to kind of your second point is, how do you go about addressing it when you're in the moment and when stress is high? Because I do agree. Now, if we all agree now that emotions are at the forefront and or coming on the back end, oftentimes both, of all of our actions, it's either triggering an action or the action is triggering an emotion. Most of the time it's both. Then emotional regulation, i.e. emotional control, becomes an enormous part of this, because we're not going to get rid of the emotion. But what we want to do is avoid making emotionally charged decisions where the emotion is what's deciding what we go do. The emotion is deciding the action, because human beings, while we are not creatures of logic, we absolutely can be logical. We can be objective. We can be strategic and operationalized. But like you just said, man, this is a skill. And this is harnessed through deliberate training like any other skill there is. So if we agree now that there's emotions attached to what we are doing, then how do we go about gaining emotional regulation? Great question. I'm glad you asked. And we teach this stuff constantly. And there's a lot that goes into it. I'll just say here, something that your audience can grasp onto and take away from it is a very simple process. And it is detach, prioritize, focus, execute. Those are the 4 steps. And this is very easy to say. It's much more difficult to do. We're talking conceptual, but I think that's where it begins, is that 30,000 feet. And eventually, as we learn and get better, we dial into the tactics, into the mechanics. So in the moment of stress, when the decision is in front of you, when you're at that decision point, you're at that crossroad, we teach this to particularly our junior leaders on detachments. It's detach. It's zoom out, especially in today's world where we got that 45-degree angle syndrome, right? Like everyone's just down and in. It's like zoom out. I need you out and around. I need you to be able to absorb the environment as a whole. What are we actually dealing with here? And with that, then can come some perspective. It can come some gratitude. Like there's other things that you can start to weaponize here by virtue of zooming out. So detach is that. Then it's like, okay, there's a lot of things happening. What needs to happen now? Now we're talking about prioritization. What needs to happen now? Right, I got it. There are 50 things. There are 50 little micro problems. Well, guess what? One of them is going to be number 1, and one of them is going to be number 50, and the rest are going to be in between. So which one needs to be addressed immediately? Boom, it's that one, right? And again, more is lost by indecision than the wrong decision. So just decide and begin moving, and we'll adjust if we need to. So prioritization, boom, I need to address this right now. Cool. Step 3 is focus. The human brain can focus on one thing at one time. And I hear this a lot, and we teach this when it comes to multitasking. There's a massive misconception of what multitasking actually is. Many people believe multitasking is doing a whole lot of things at the same time. And while you can certainly do that, what is often and almost certainly likely to happen is you're doing a bunch of things poorly, because the human brain can focus on one thing at one time. And what true high performers and elite multitaskers are able to do is shift and lift and regain focus fast. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. They're focused on one thing at one time, but they're shifting so quickly that it may seem like they're doing multiple things at the same time. So that's what multitasking is. Shift fire, lift fire, regain focus on what you need to do. So when we're talking focus, not only are we talking about zeroing in on just the one thing, but we're talking about removing everything else, right? Removing everything else. This needs my attention right now. It may be for the next 6 seconds or the next 6 hours, but I'm working on this now until I reach completion. Boom. And then, beyond that, it's just execution. That's where it ends. So just begin movement. Start working towards it. So detach, prioritize, focus, and execute. And
Good.
I just, in closing, there's more to that, man, but you said it best up front, DJ, is that this is a skill. All right, this is a skill, and we have been given the gift as human beings to harness this skill as much as we want. Every single day brings opportunity to flex this muscle, to employ this skill. Whether that day consists of you simply going to the grocery store and that's it, you can employ what we are just talking about right now in that environment. You don't need to be in the battlefield with bombs going off and machine gun bullets whipping over your head. It doesn't matter. This is a process. And the more deliberate you are about employing that skill, eventually the more automated it becomes. And that is ultimately the goal, is to make this habitual and automated so it requires less purposeful effort and focus, where it just starts happening. And that's when you start. And those that do this the best, we know most of them by name, right? Edison, Jordan, right? It's like the greats are the ones that have gotten this skill to be so automated that they make it look so easy. And that's part of the process of what makes them as good as they are.
That's awesome, man. Something that you've said a few times through this conversation is Roger that. And you have a Instagram post that says this: adopt the Roger that mentality. Broken leg, Roger that. Failed a test, Roger that. Girlfriend dumped you, Roger that. Whatever the circumstances, own it, learn, adapt, and move out. For civilians and people who aren't as familiar with Roger that, what does that mean? Talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, Roger that. I'm using it now as a, obviously, to the general public. You know, it's a way in the military in which we typically respond to a transmission, right? So just imagine it's over the radio, or it could be face to face. You know, DJ, you're one of my commanders that's out getting things done. I'm at a higher headquarters somewhere. I come across the radio and I'm like, hey man, here's the situation. You know, the route that you're on right now, the road is cratered. You cannot get your vehicles across that route to get to where you need to go. I'm looking for some information to help you out, but just that, like, that's the current intel we have. And your response to me would be Roger that. And that's it. It's just as simple as it is, right? Maybe you have a question. Odds are you don't. Odds are Roger that. So what does that mean? Great question. What does that mean? Roger that means basically four things. One is I understand my current environment, right? I know what you just told me, but also I know about where I am right now, right? I understand my current operational environment. Two is I understand the dilemma that's now been posed to me. I understand the risk or the threat. All right. I'm completely aware of the environment as it pertains to where I'm at, what's being thrown at me, and I understand my status. Like, I know where I am. In that example, you're in the vehicle. All right. I'm on the map. I know I'm right here, and I know that there's now a hole in the road that's 2 miles in front of me. So it's an understanding of the situation. It's an understanding of your own personal status. And then it's knowing that we are going to accomplish the mission no matter what, which is the mentality of the military, especially in special operations. How do I use this problem to my advantage? There is a way. There is a way to extract positivity out of the worst dilemmas. Sometimes it may take years to be able to see that value, but it exists. And in that scenario, we don't have years. So it's not only an acceptance of the thing, but it's good. I'm glad the road's created, because you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to come in this way along this route that no one would have expected me to do. And it's actually going to work to my advantage. I'm going to get myself up on this high ground over here, even better, that I really wasn't thinking about until now, because I was going to go this way. Now I can't. But you know what's over there? There's a hilltop. There's a nice HLZ just to the north. I can use that. It goes beyond like, oh, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. It goes to, how do I use this to my advantage? And then it closes with continue mission, right? Charlie Mike, which is the acronym for continue mission, CM, Charlie Mike. Because again, we are going to complete our task. We are going to be successful. We are going to reach mission success in our desired end state. So Roger that is understanding of the situation, status check of myself. How do I take advantage of what's happening, and continue mission?
You talk about, that's phenomenal. You talk about the emotion part of it, right? We just got done talking about that. When you say Roger that, it seems like it takes away the emotion of, uh, but really, or are you sure? Or, oh, this sucks. I can't believe it. It takes that away because you have an automatic, this is my response. It's a rehearsed response that takes away any of that shit. It's like we're moving forward. When I say Roger that, it seems like, again, I'm new to this, but it seems like I'm looking forward. I'm not looking backwards. What can I do? What's next?
Yeah, and that's it. And in the military, and then oftentimes the way we're using this language, it doesn't matter what your emotional state is to it. Now, again, we're emotional creatures and all that stuff is happening, but we have a job to do. And oftentimes we're talking life and death consequences. So it's irrelevant. Know what those are: emotional regulation, emotional control, all these things, absolutely critical, particularly in those situations. But it doesn't make a difference what it is. It is your responsibility to address that and manage those accordingly and still execute. So, yeah, you're right. It's an automated, operationalized mindset and process of I'm going to continue to take in information about what my environment it looks like. And this could be in the boardroom, on the battlefield, on the playing court, in the education center. It doesn't matter. What's my situation? How am I going to leverage every single possible opportunity to my advantage? Because I am going to win. It's just only a matter of how I go about doing it.
Own it, learn, adapt, and move out. Nick, I have one more question for you, and it's one that we could probably do an entire podcast on, but I'm just eager to learn from you. I'm going to be a father for the first time in February to a little girl.
Boom.
Yeah, we're so excited, man.
Congratulations, brother.
Thank you. I've been really intentional about asking specific people for advice, and somebody like you who has the warrior mindset. I'm curious, Nick, as we close down, what does the warrior mindset look like as a father? What does that
Mm.
look like in civilian life? How can civilians adopt a warrior type mindset as a parent to their young children? What does that look like as we close down?
Yeah, man. I mean, first off, warrior, in my opinion, is not exclusive to those that are warriors by profession. Warrior is a mindset. Do you believe in something and are you willing to fight for it? If the answer is yes, then you are a warrior. That's it. Warrior mindset is as depicted in the first section of the book you got there. Is it's broken down into 4 sections. They're all translated into a single word. It's discipline, it's resilience, it's persistence, and it's commitment. And these are applicable terms that most of us are extremely familiar with and know. Sometimes we may need a little bit of a reminder or some help in getting better at those things, but these aren't surprises to most adults. Like, oh yeah, I know those things matter. So while those 4 terms certainly apply to us as professional warfighters, they apply to us regardless. And when you take those and you apply them to yourself as a parent, man, I'll tell you, it's just as amazing to watch that part of me as a parent. My wife and I, we got 2 small boys, develop as it is as a Green Beret, as it is as a complex problem solver, as a consultant coach. I mean, applying those same exact principles and philosophies and tools to me as a husband and a father, I'm getting more satisfaction out of that than watching my business grow or heading the next rank in the army. It's the same stuff, but I'm channeling it inward towards myself and my family. And I'll just wrap it up here because I think this is a beautiful point is in the movie We Were Soldiers, right? Mel Gibson plays the role of Colonel Hal Moore, who eventually retired as a brigadier general during Vietnam. And he's asked a question in an interview. He's the husband and a father to 4 or 5 kids. And they asked him, how do you balance being a good soldier and a good family man? And his response, which I think was brilliant, was, I'd like to think that being good at the one makes me better at the other. And that, to me, is incredibly forward thinking, simple, but forward thinking and complex in a way, because it's easy, as I stated, where if you take all these tenets that make you good as a soldier in my world, but really any type of professional, discipline, structure, work ethic, sacrifice, and you apply those to your life as a husband and a father, it's going to make you better at those things, which is true. And I think that that's pretty easy to grasp. To Colonel General Moore's point, was it's a very much a two-way street. So if you also think about the tenets and principles that make you good as a father and a husband, We're talking compassion, empathy, patience, something we talked about earlier. These kind of character traits and attributes, and you apply them to your work as a soldier, it's going to make you better there. And that is, for me, what took a minute for me to be able to grasp that, because I live in a very high octane, high op tempo, thick skin, candid, no bullshit, in your face, execute world. And I've been here now coming up on 17 years. But these aspects that I work to being better at when it comes to my kids and my wife, I started deliberately applying them to my wife as a soldier and as a Green Beret. And I started to see effects, compassion, empathy, patience being kind of the top three. Love, right? Again, these like squishy, warm, emotional things that make us savage warriors uncomfortable, but it's part of being a human. And these are tools at your disposal. And of course, there's a time and a place to wield them like any tool, but to limit yourself because of a perceived notion of what a culture should be, I think is just that. I think it's limiting. So it very much is a two-way street. Warrior has nothing more to do than a belief in something and are willing to fight for it. And I'll close by saying, well, many of your listeners, probably most, and certainly you yourself, we've got these ambitions and the clock is ticking, right? And I got all these things I want to do in this life, and it's a gift, and I want to get after it. And I got all these things. It's amazing. It's important. It's awesome. You bring in kids into the equation, and man, you'll see, and you've probably heard this. The moment you're holding that little thing, I think you said girl or her, in your hands, your entire world's going to flip upside down, bro. Everything you thought was the most important thing in the world in that exact moment. Actually, the picture of that moment for me is in Objective Secure. I'm staring at my oldest son in his face, like, holy shit. Not only is it the fear of like, wow, I got to make sure that nothing happens to this little thing, but all the things I thought were the most important things in the world in that moment, all of a sudden I could not care any less about. It doesn't matter. You matter, right? You matter. Your mom matters. My wife, that's what matters. And of course, priorities change, and you continue to do things and continue to get after it. And your professional world is important, and hobbies and these things, but it can become, and it will become, increasingly more challenging. So those of us that are parents and those of us that are husbands and wives and spouses, when you're trying to manage getting after it for your own need to be great and win, and you have an enormous obligation to those around you, while it may complex things a bit, make them a little more challenging, when you can start to apply what makes you good at the one towards the other, in my opinion, is what has all kind of rising collectively. And it's much easier said than done. I want to share this with you personally, DJ, as you embark on this new journey, and you're going to have a blast, is be cognizant of what makes you great as you and as a professional will, if you choose, make you great as a father. And what makes you great as a father, if you choose, will make you great within the rest of your endeavors.
Give me goosebumps. Nick Lavery, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, thanks so much. How can my listeners support you best?
Yeah, man. Thank you for bringing that up. So our website is teammachine.com, machine spelled MCHN, team spelled normal. And it's got links to the socials. It's got links to the shop. It's got links for the book you're holding right there for Objective Secure, which is available on Amazon. It's available audiobook. And then we also do, I should say, because I do them personally, offer signed copies, which you can get through the website as well. And really my favorite part about the website, which some of my team is trying to get me to take down or get us to take down, is there's a way to reach me personally. There's a couple email options. One's like business stuff or speaking or workshops or whatever. And the other one comes directly to me. And I do actually get all that stuff myself. And I do go through in reverse chronological order. So there's a bit of a backlog, but that to me excites me. My connectivity, our connectivity with our audience and our community, I think is very important. So if you got something on your mind, struggle, a question, military life in general, feel free, hit me up. I'll be looking forward to getting after it with you.
Awesome. And the merchandise is great. I got to get one of those shirts, man.
Right on, man. We got new ones coming out, so stay tuned, brother. I'm excited.
Okay, I'll actively stay patient. Nick, this was awesome, man. You're a savage of a human being and also just caring at the same time. Not a lot of folks like you, man. Thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
DJ, likewise, brother. I appreciate it, man. Have a good one.